morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Pugh, and I lead the Hospitality Valuation Advisory service line at Knight Frank Middle East. But we also cover the Sub-Saharan African market and North Africa too. So this morning we have a very distinguished panel, three of the most established operators in the world. We have Adrian Massarelli from Four Seasons, Duncan O'Rourke from Accor, who's primarily focused on the economy, mid-scale and premium brands, and Neil Jones, representing Marriott. And of course, the one and only Khaled Anib from AD&H Hotels, Abu Dhabi National Hotels. Okay, gentlemen, the first sort of part of the conversation is going to sort of resolve around some of the market themes and also some of the sort of product types and locations we're looking at. Generally, we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the sub-Saharan African markets. Sort of the likes of Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt are very established in everyone's minds, and they have most of the supply. So we're going to be looking a little bit more about the sub-Saharan African markets this morning. So the first part is, of course, we've been hearing some of the headlines about the data and that tourism is dramatically improving in some of these markets. And we've got particularly some big headlines about the supply growth. So I'm going to be sort of asking AD&H first, as an investor from the UAE, where do you see the tourism potential and the opportunities that would inspire investment and long-term engagement in the market?
Thank you, Daniel. Africa's tourism story. Thank you. Africa's tourism story is incredibly compelling when we look at the diversity, the beautiful nature, the heritage, the authenticity, and of course, the joyful and hospitable population. These creates fantastic experiences that can't simply be replicated elsewhere in the world. Having said that, this potential will need to be transformed into performance, a performance that should create value for investors, for governments, and most importantly, for local populations. As a foreign investor, we will not only bring into Africa capital, but also expertise, innovation, and technology.
Thank you, Khaled. And to Adrian, particularly Four Seasons are associated with very high luxury product, and particularly in these resort locations, that where do you see the opportunities in the market for your product type in particular?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And first and foremost, Africa has always been a very important continent for us in our industry and in our segment. Today, with our 14 properties that we have on the African continent, it's about 30% of actually our EMEA portfolio. And when we look at future potential, we go about it in a very strategic way. We look at where do our customers go, and we look at experience. Today, experience travel is what we see important for our customers. And then we really map the continent into where we see Four Seasons can bring value to the customers, but also to the local community. So this is how we go about. And we look, aside from Egypt that you mentioned, Morocco that you mentioned, which are really country collections, we look at creating those collections, and we look at how we can combine also beach, safari destinations to create a journey for our customers. There is certain destinations in Africa where today we don't have a hotel, but we are able to cover this with our private jet journey as well. we are bringing the Four Seasons private jet twice a year, and we call it the African Wonders. And it's a very popular journey. It's a 13-day journey where we go to 6 destinations. And again, in some of those destinations, we don't have hotels yet, but still we are able to cover it through these very high net worth individuals that are really emerging into that market and are looking for this experience.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, which we'll come on to a little bit later about sort of Four Seasons is sort of private jet market, essentially. They have obviously a lot of customers that want to experience locations which potentially there are fewer hotels, and it's about gaps in the market in some of those locations, which we'll touch on in a minute. To Duncan and Neil, where is your opinion on where you're seeing the opportunities? And then are there any sort of patterns or trends in those opportunities that you're seeing at the moment?
Yeah, with Marriott, we operate 150 odd hotels across the African continent today. And I have to say, Africa is absolutely on fire when it comes to development opportunities. The growth in Africa is significant. It's actually one of the largest growth markets of any continent for Marriott anywhere in the world. And what is driving that is the fact that, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of the governments within that belt have realized the upside and opportunity that comes with developing tourism. So if you think about Rwanda, Uganda, a number of these countries have really robust tourism infrastructure plans in place, new airports, new roads. They're really significantly and materially investing in, I think, very robust plans to develop tourism. And when we as Marriott look at development opportunities in countries and locations, the first thing we do is we look at whether or not the country itself is moving in the right direction with regards to developing tourism for the medium to long term. That's incredibly important. Secondly, we look at, obviously, the market dynamics, both today but also into the future. So we look at the feasibility side of the business. Where do we see upside from a demand perspective? Where do we see new inbound flights coming from and projecting into the future? And then we look at basically which brands within Marriott International would suit certain locations based on those trends. And we work with, obviously, investors, both local and international, and we work in collaboration with them to determine which brands, what facilities, and which particular location would work best. And we partner with developers and investors, obviously, to maximize the return on their capital. And together, we see particularly sub-Saharan Africa as a significant growth opportunity, without doubt. And I know you feel the same, right, Duncan?
100% the same as Neil. Accor has been, it's not something new, Accor has been 40 years already in Africa. It's been very strategic to us. This may be the first time I've been on stage where we have more hotels than Marriott in the region. Yeah. We have 174, so very similar, 174 hotels, probably 60 in the projects. And then in the sub-Sahara, around 75, with about 25 in projects there. And so exactly what Neil was saying, the opportunity to grow is one of the most important strategic destinations that Accor has. And that is in metropolitan cities, as well as the resort business as well, and over a wide range as well in terms of segments. So premium is becoming very, very big there, but at the same time, the mid-scale as well is going through. And so very selective on how we do it, where we do it. It's not just about signing as many as you can. We were just, 10 minutes ago, we did a strategic partnership signing with Mayan, a local based here to strategically grow in Africa. And as you know, we have also Kasada Capital, which is the QIA Qataris, and Accor, led by Olivier Garnet, where we also grow in Africa. And it's exactly what Neil and what you were saying there. It's about also not just putting a hotel, but reflecting the social aspect of it as well, increasing the value of where that hotel goes, respecting the ESG, the social sides of that as well. So very, very excited. Putting more resources there, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's particularly for Marriott and Accor. I mean, what is your sort of generic, very high level sort of split of product between sort of city and resort? And are there any particular countries that you're where most of that supply is? And conversely as well, where would you want to actually be that you are not now?
Well, about 15% of our product is in the luxury space, predominantly Ritz-Carlton and St. Regis brands, as well as the luxury collection. About 50% of our distribution is within the premium segment, which of course is kind of your Sheraton and Marriott full-service brands. And then the balance is in select service, which for us, particularly in that part of the world, 4 Points by Sheraton is a very popular brand, a lot of brand equity within sub-Saharan Africa particularly. When I look at kind of the spread of those hotels, the vast majority today are city center, with some provincial, but generally city center. We have been fairly active in the lodge space in the last couple of years. Many of you will be aware that we have opened a JW Marriott Masai Mara. We just opened a Ritz-Carlton Masai Mara. We have around 11 lodges in the pipeline, both in Kenya, Uganda, and a couple of other countries as well, as we kind of continue to get into that space. And what we're finding is that international inbound customers, particularly Marriott Bonvoy members, of which we have about 250 million around the world, visiting a lodge and doing a safari is absolutely on their bucket list. And we're finding that the demand through the system for those particular hotels is absolutely beyond all expectations. And as we get deeper into that space, we expect to expand pretty aggressively over the next few years. So that's a very exciting part. But I think, as you said, there is just so much opportunity. There really, really is. I think sub-Saharan Africa and Africa in general is very untapped. We have more than 100 hotels in the pipeline. We signed 40 hotels only in the last kind of 14, 15 months. And that pace of signings is aggressively increasing. So over the next kind of year or so, we expect to sign at least another 100 deals. So whilst we have 150 today, if you ask me in 2-3 years from now, I would expect us to be significantly larger with regards to our presence, and maybe even bigger than Accor. I don't know. We're going to do our best.
The same question to you, Duncan, is...
Yeah, in our side, probably very similar in terms of luxury, around 15%. With the lodges, what we did, we were very proud of. We did the acquisition of Mantis, which was that very traditional sub-Saharan high-end lodge business with Adrian Gardner, the founder of that, and as well as Habitas. We see a huge opportunity in the metropolitan cities, and you can see, I think 10 or 15 will become above 10 million inhabitants, and around another 20 secondary above 5 million. So there's huge potential there as well to do that. On the islands, Indian Ocean, we see the opportunity. We're signing for the resorts as well. And what we do see a new trend coming through are the residences. The branded residences are becoming more and more pertinent. So again, just echoing huge potential in the continent, and that's why it's so important to be there and to go after each segment, because there are tremendous segments out there.
And so those branded residential sort of components, I mean, we're seeing that in the Middle East anyway, is multiple hotels, resort hotels are incorporating service departments and branded residential units. And is this something you possibly see coming into Africa as well? Is this in the supply pipeline?
Indeed, we have already 3 or 4 in the pipeline. It will become more and more of a significant aspect of what we do. Absolutely. Mainly obviously in the first year, in Lagos and in Ghana, in Cape Town and all those. But it can come up, but we do see a significant trend there, and we start to sign those on.
And Adrian, moving on to the sort of that brand strategy piece that you're talking about, in terms of, do you actually help the owners that you work with identify sort of opportunities in the African market, and particularly those locations where you are taking your customers on the jet experience, fabulous as that sounds, to these locations where there are perhaps not any hotels, particularly in that regard. Are you actively engaged in that?
We are, and maybe just to the point of my colleagues here, of course we are a mono brand. We only have 4 seasons and we only operate in one segment. So with this, we are also becoming quite a sensitive brand. So we are very intentional in the way that we grow anywhere, but more specifically in Africa. And going actually to the branded residential, we have started that in Africa in our resort properties 15 years ago when we opened in the Seychelles. Now we have 2 properties in the Seychelles, both of them with a branded residential component, as well as in Mauritius, right? And when we look at the growth, and specifically certain cities that we currently are looking at in Africa, although you can call it urban, for us we look at this of more of urban resort destinations. And to go back to the developer, for us, as we map out the strategic growth of Africa, we have a few of our developers and partners that are very invested already. Some of them local investors, some of them foreign investors that find a local partner. And we look at the map together with them, and ultimately they know us. We have developed multiple hotels with our partners that we currently have in Africa, and we work with them in tandem, in partnership, to further develop the continent.
Interesting, thank you, Adrian. Khalid, similarly, in terms of sort of, I know perhaps not specifically a sort of strategy for Africa, but what would you be, as an investor, sort of looking at in terms of qualifying a location or considering an investment in particularly some of these sub-Saharan African markets?
Africa is a very large continent with more than 50 different markets. Each one of them has different dynamics, different strengths, different challenges. And our strategy will certainly be focusing on markets where governments has established a vision with clear directives and enabling frameworks to attract the foreign investor, and that entails policy regulations, infrastructure, eventually stability, and many other fundamentals that are required for any foreign investor to venture into, for us, it's still uncharted territory. So we really need to have a deep analysis on these fundamentals and to ensure that these fundamentals will allow us to invest and protect our investment. And also scalability is important, and sustainability as well.
Yeah, thank you, Khalid. So a little bit moving more now onto the sort of some of the ownership and investment structures, particularly about operating structure, because it does appear to be an enabler for development in Africa, and particularly with working with local owners. And the first sort of question is to Neil, because approximately 50% of their stock in Africa is franchised, which implies local expertise and local ownership and working with potentially sort of foreign investors. So a little point on this, Neil, is this, this franchise model, which is actually really only gaining traction and established in the European and US markets. How do you see that helping the investor here in the African markets? And what has been your experience of this franchising system?
Yeah, there's no doubt that franchising is definitely becoming a very important factor with regards to the investment decision by owners. 5 to 10 years ago, the majority of our hotels across Africa, obviously there was fewer hotels back then, were in the managed space. So we were managing those hotels. Today, as you said, it's about 50-50. If we look at the pipeline, it's still about 50-50, maybe a little heavier on the franchise side. Franchising allows an investor and an owner to essentially benefit from the power of Marriott's distribution system, but at the same time operate the hotel either themselves, if they're a qualified operator, or certainly employ a third-party management company, of which we generally work very closely with, either in sub-Saharan Africa or across Africa or even around the world. And some of the more established management companies are moving into Africa as well, because they also see that there is an opportunity for them. On occasion, it can create more favorable economics for an investor or an owner. On other occasions, it's the fact that the owner really wants to operate the hotels themselves, and particularly when you have quite a localized, unique environment, the franchise route really becomes very, very attractive. And I think that's something that will be here to stay, and as I said earlier, will actually accelerate in time for sure.
Are some of these sort of white label third-party managers, are these mostly foreign hotel expertise coming into that country, or are there some local?
So it's a balance. So you've got kind of global operators moving into the management space or the operating space, and you also have some local expertise as well. Whether that be kind of local expertise with regards to just one hotel that one owner owns, or local operators that are operating just in the African space. So it's actually a combination of both.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Duncan, you mentioned Casada, your partnership with them. How has it been for your perception, from an investor's point of view, of what Casada's experience has been like in Africa, and how it's sort of panning out and what the future is?
Look, Casada Capital it's a success story, a really and a special one, because the fund was created, this platform was created to invest in the hotel business in Africa, generally more in the sub-Saharan Africa, so not so much in Egypt or Morocco, but there's plans to have a look at that. And that's gone well. That's gone extremely well. And it's threefold. It's about taking older hotels, but wonderful locations, and energizing, investing in these hotels, bringing them up. All the hotels were branded via a core portfolio, so one of our 48 brands. And that's gone very, very well. I mean, the team behind Olivier is dynamic, and it's a big team there. And so we start to even explore the option there already, exactly when it was said about not third party, but franchise, and seeing where you drive that and how you go there. But these type of platforms that Casada has been very, very beneficial, and you see that when you visit them, not just the hotel, not just the top line, not just the thing, but what it does to the community as well, and that's also extremely important in part of that process going forward.
Particularly Four Seasons, you obviously have some partnerships with owners. Have those partnerships been genuinely sort of have any special characteristics because they're investing in Africa? Okay. Yeah, the question was, have any of your local owners, your ownership partnerships, have they sort of have any special characteristics as African investors? And generally, what is your sort of partnership like with them in terms of Africa hotels?
Yeah, so in Egypt, for example, we have a very strong partner. Out of the 4 hotels, currently owns 3, plus another 2 in the pipeline to open with that same partner in Madinati and in Giza. So again, those are more the established markets, and the owner, of course, in that particular case, sees the benefit in certain locations to bring Four Seasons as the operator. I would say similar experience we have in Tunisia and in Morocco, with partners that are very much knowledgeable about the local intricacies of what they bring along. Now in Sub-Saharan Africa, it's interesting, we have a very strong partner that typically brings on board a local investor as partner. And we see that they don't go after a spreadsheet. We see that oftentimes those investments are also emotionally driven and looking at the potential that this location has in the future. And for us as an operator that really focuses heavily on product and on service, this is something that we appreciate in our partners, that they don't just look at today, what is there, but what is the potential of certain destinations in the future. And it has proven to be very successful so far.
Very interesting. Moving on to sort of development issues now. Development costs are generally rising in the market, particularly for hotels, particularly across the Middle East. And I think that there is some variance of costs and development sort of issues in the African market. You know, from your experience with your owners, you know, particularly to the operators, how has that affected the development process for an investor? Maybe to Neil first.
Well, all of our developers are here, actually, our African developers. I'm not sure if in the audience, but they would generally say that there's a lot of enthusiasm when it comes to developing across Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. There's a lot of will, but there are some challenges, and some of those challenges are around construction costs. The others would be around construction quality, so you really do need to work very, very closely with your partners just to make sure that there are regular check-ins so that the quality of the product is there, and at the same time making sure that from a timeline perspective we try and get the hotels open as quickly as we can. In fact, today we just opened the first international hotel in Mauritania, which is the Sheraton Hotel there. And it opens its doors today, but it's been under development for a few years, and it's taken a while. But the quality of the product that has been delivered is outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And that has come through really close collaboration with our global partners, our development team, and of course global design and the owners there. And I think that's the key when it comes to developing in Africa. That collaboration needs to be extremely close so that the product at the end of the day, whether it's a select service hotel or a luxury hotel, is where it needs to be, and it really reflects that of the brand. And that's the key piece from an operating perspective. And of course ramping up and whatnot, that brings its usual challenges, whether it's in Africa or anywhere else in the world, frankly. It's just the usual opening process of a hotel.
Yes. Have you been using a sort of local contractor there, or has it been an international contractor that's come in to do that work?
It depends in kind of which city and market. I would say in the most part, it's local developers, it's local contractors. Maybe they would have an international partner, but generally speaking, it's led by locals, for sure. Which is great, right? That brings kind of economic prosperity as well.
Yeah. Khalid, a similar sort of question to you. I mean, if you were sort of considering a hotel acquisition or a development project, is there any particular way you would want to go first? Perhaps acquiring an existing hotel and converting it, or developing a new hotel in a fresh market? What would be your sort of first instinct about developing hotels in Africa?
As I said earlier, of course, there are different markets and different strengths and challenges for each one of them. But if we focus on the right market with the right fundamentals, we will be looking at the right partner in that particular market when it comes to greenfield development, because we are not present in Africa and we don't have any expertise in developing hotels in Africa. So the local partner, whether a government or a private sector, will certainly add value and help to speed up that process. Currently, what would be ideal for an investor such as Abu Dhabi National Hotels it's certainly acquisition because it's much easier, even acquisition of a hospitality portfolio that would eventually need to be repositioned by injecting cash in a capex to elevate the product.
Thank you. And finally, to that topic to Adrian, obviously as an upper luxury brand with many resort locations, what has been your experience of sort of the development process and pipeline?
Yeah, maybe if I would just a couple words on what I hear through the developers, what they would maybe appreciate more in some of the destination, and I appreciate this doesn't apply to all, but specifically when developing hotels, we really want to create a win-win-win situation here for number one, local market, making sure that we are protective of the environment and really create a hotel that makes locally sense, and we ultimately bring also jobs to these respective markets. While oftentimes the contractors are local, I think there is always a consideration to support certain importations of goods, specifically when it comes to FF&E. And I think local governments can really be helpful in making this happen, and we have actually seen this in many of the destinations. The other observation that I have, again from a point of view and lens of the developer, is when they do dividend distributions, that there is no complications of getting capital out of the country as well, while they create that wealth within the country, of course. So those are just a few observations that I would say that could definitely help certain countries to keep developing in that sector.
I see. And sort of moving on to the final topic is about these partnerships with government. There's a lot of talk, of course, of the UAE government partnering with African countries. Fly Dubai, for example, are flying into Nairobi for their first flight last week. These air connections, these partnerships with government are going to be very important to encourage investors into those markets, particularly the fresh ones where there are very few hotels. Duncan, a question to you and to Neil, I think, as well, is that, what has been your experience of these kind of partnerships, and, how do you perceive their importance for investors going into Africa?
I think they're very important. I think these are wonderful news with Fly Dubai flying in more. I think more infrastructure, more lift, and more countries investing in Africa is imperative. It's a wonderful place. There's huge opportunities there, wonderful people. And really unexplored, beautiful destinations still to see, and that's also always very, very important. And I think from that side, that's why Accor takes it so seriously in all aspects, in the luxury division, in the PME division, but just as importantly in the Ennismore, in that very lifestyle division as well. All three of these are taking the investment, the initiative, and doing whatever we can to encourage as well in terms of partnerships into the country there. Like I said right at the beginning, we've been there for 40 years. We're very, very proud of the past. We're going to be proud of the future. I think it's a wonderful place, a wonderful continent, a wonderful future coming there.
Thank you, Duncan. Neil?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, firstly, it's a fascinating part of the world. It has so much to offer, and it's relatively untapped with so much opportunity. And, like Duncan, Marriott International takes Africa extremely seriously. Like I said at the start of my remarks, it's the fastest growing development pipeline country that Marriott International has anywhere else in the world, right? So, and we're only at the start of that journey, I think. Going back to the question in terms of partnerships, it's incredibly important that private companies like Marriott and Accor and Four Seasons and others have close relationships with government across Africa, and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, because that collaboration, that cooperation really helps on a number of fronts, whether that's on the development side, whether that's on the education and training side, employment side, through the build. It really is very, very important. And we work very hard on that and regularly meet with leaders of most of the sub-Saharan African countries very regularly. And we collectively work together on developing tourism for that country, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's a very lucrative way to kind of drive growth for the country, drive GDP, and you know, bring prosperity to that part of the world. And we're very proud to be a big partner, working very closely with most governments.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that wraps up the conversation. Hope it's giving you some insights into the minds of investors and, of course, the operators as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.